Hi folks, hope your week is going well. It should be Tuesday when this comes out, so hopefully everything's going well in your life and you're having a good time. Today we're going to be discussing a lovely story from my time at GW that I just got reminded of a few days ago, well over the weekend actually. I was speaking to an old friend of mine called Jason, and I need to send a special thank you out to him for reaching out and reminding me of this, because it's too easy to forget the better stories in all the filth that we have to cover in Hobby Nightmares. But at times, this isn't so much of a GW story as much as a funny thing that happened to me whilst I was a manager. And Jason, as a person, is one of the nicest blokes I met whilst I was working at GW. And he wasn't a person who was working with the company, he was actually a customer of a sort. So let me just run right into the story then, since we're here, because these are shorter videos, just to tide you over between the Hobby Nightmares. So this one comes from my time as a manager, but also in my local area. So sometimes when I was working with GW, I would come home on holiday, and I'd spend time at my local hobby stores and hobby groups, just doing some painting or modelling or doing some games. We had a hobby group meeting above a pub called the Elm Tree, and it's still there to this day where the pub is. It is really, really, really cool little pub. If you're ever in Liverpool, give it a look. It is a really nice place, and I'm not sure if they still do the hobby group upstairs, but it was amazing when I was there, right in the centre of town. But anyway, it was a lovely place with a great set of people, and when I got my job at GW, a lot of them would rib me and joke with me about how much of an evil Disney company I was now working for. They even treated me in a funny way as a spy for the company, wanting to know what their tastes were so I could sell them stuff. All in good fun, of course. But it does change. Like when you start working with GW, especially if you are a part of a group already, a hobby group already, it does change how people view you and see you, and how some of them think they can get something out of you. Some of them think that you're now the linchpin for all of their complaints, and they should come and complain to you whenever GW do something bad. It just is what it is, right? But at the same time, it can be quite grating at times. Anyway, one of the lads there was the aforementioned Jason. A lad in his early 20s, I believe he was something about 21 at the time, who had the most immaculately painted pre-heresy Death Guard army I've ever seen. The dude was a genius when it came to fouling up light grey colours and dull white colours. Just some Death Guard players just get that aesthetic of the rusting metal that is on the... I honestly think there is more skill to painting pre-heresy Death Guard than post. I know that sounds weird, but unless you're going whole hog with conversions, sometimes, it can be like, how am I going to paint this intestine? Well, I'll just paint it pink and put some Agrax Earthshade on it, Whereas, like, some of the pre-heresy Death Guard stuff that I see, it looks rusted and horrible, but it just looks beautiful to look at. And Jason was one of those. His nickname was Lord of the Blight, mainly because he was the only Death Guard player in our group, and he was very, very, very good at the game. He was one of those players that you could play any kind of game with him, whether it's 1,000 points, 500 points, or one of the bigger games, and he would always give you a good game. It was always been narrative friendly. He would never do anything cheesy, but he would always give you a good game. But anyway, he was always an awkward chap, as most people in the hobby tend to be, but he was the first bloke to make the trip to my store to support me when I became a manager from the group. He was far from the last to do so from that group, because it was a full, really cool group of people, but it was a 6-hour round trip on the train from where I used to live. Safe to say, I treated Jason as my pet project when he was around, because every few weeks he would come down and see me, because, he worked very hard as a self-employed guy during the week, and then afterwards he would, sometimes he'd jump on the train and come down and see me. He was a very shy guy, but he was extremely lonely. An extremely lonely guy. You could just see it in him. There's certain people that you speak to, and if you're a hobbyist, you'll know exactly what I mean. When you can almost see guarding behind the eyes, you can see that in there somewhere, there's a person who is just aching for human contact, and I knew this is what Jason wanted. He wasn't gay or anything, but I knew he wanted human contact, because we got along quite well. And he sort of grabbed onto me and was like, okay, I'll come and see you then, you know, in where you are. And he would always jump on the train, come and find me, come and see me. And I always thought that was an amazing thing for him to do, but I do recognise it was scratching an itch for him as well. He didn't have many friends, even though he was a really cool guy. The true tragedy of Jason was, though, that he was also extremely funny in a dry way. Very dry. And, as I was told by a friend who is a lady, he was not overly bad to look at either. You know? He used to wear a leather jacket with a lot of patches on it, like band patches. He was, you know, into 80s metal. He was about 5'10" and had a pretty slick haircut, if I do say so myself. You know, so just a normal looking guy at the end of the day, but also pretty cool. On one of his visits, we head to the local rock pub, which is just down the road, a short walk away from my Games Workshop store. I used to take my trainer in there for a pint before things with him went a bit belly up. More on that in another story. There is a Manowar tribute band on, who do other music too, and it was an ace night all round. Really cool night. Me and Jason, we end up in the back open air area in the garden, whilst Jason huffs on a cheap cigarette, and I notice, at the corner of my eye, because Jason doesn't have a radar at this point, I notice that just like a Bronn from Game of Thrones to his Jaime, a lady is glancing over at Jason as he holds court. He's had a few beers at this point, so he's coming out of his shell a little bit, and he's talking to us about the hobby. This lady, I want to call her Jane, strolls over to Jason, who is now wearing my Games Workshop manager's sweater, as it's kind of cold. I stole his cool jacket because, you know, I was on the pull. She sits down and says to him, and I quote, she says to him, "Are you that manager from Games Workshop? My friend really likes you, but I figured I'd get over here first so you can buy me a drink." Jason looks at me, pleading, astonished that a woman is talking to him. I scoff into my pint and turn away, leaving him to his own devices to talk about Blood Bowl with another mate of ours, Frank, who came up with Jason this time. I don't listen into their conversation, but Jane is about 48 years old. But she also looks around 30 or so. You know, good on her. And that means she's about 25 years Jason's senior. But hey, Jason can't believe his luck, because, you know, she is one of those Christina Scabbia types who's actually very old in terms of years, but looks a lot younger. And by that, I mean, you know, he can't believe his luck, and by that I mean literally. He's literally sitting there gobsmacked that she's just talking to him. So, as Jane goes to the bar to get them both a drink, and I will say, older ladies do that. They just kick ass and take names, especially rock chicks. If they will buy you a drink if they like you. You know what I mean? They don't give a shit about chivalry. It's nice. But at the same time, I've never known women who can build a guy up than older rock chicks. They just, like, a lot of my early girlfriends were older rock chicks who were in the 30s. I was, like, in my early 20s. Or maybe, I think my first one was, I was at 19. And my first girlfriend was, like, she must have been, like, proper girlfriend. She must have been about 33, 34. But, like, she knew what she wanted. And she could see that, you know, I was a bit, you know, I was confident, but I wasn't coming out of my shell. And she got me out of my shell, you know. It was like one of those catharsis moments where she was like, "Oh, this guy's a project. I'll build him up a little bit." You know, they tend to build you up and not knock you down, which I really like about most rock chicks. Don't get me wrong, there are, as I say all the time, there are exceptions to the rule, but most of the time, I've worked in rock bars, I've gone to a lot of rock bars, I've met a lot of people. Most of them are builders. You know, they will take you and go, "Hey, I like this guy, he's a project. Let me," you know, and they like being the brash one. They like being the one who's doing the leading for a little while, but they build you up into a leader so they can sit back and go, "Hey, you take the reins, baby. You go and do what you want to do, and I'll just sit in. You can buy me a drink. That's fine," you know. And Jason became that guy later, but he wasn't that guy right now. But Jane was just what he needed. Do you know what I mean? So Jason turns to me as she goes to the bar, and he's like, "Did that happen? Like, what the fuck is going on?" I just shrug and ask him what he told her, and he's like, as he's like, you know, he's not a manager at Games Workshop. He goes white because he hasn't realised and says, like, "Dude, I never got a chance. We just got talking about Motley Crue. In fact, we're both going to the same gig in Manchester in a few weeks. Small world." And I was like, "All right, cool, excellent." I say, "That's fantastic." But then I say to him, "Look, you need to clear up that you're not the GW guy, or she's going to be very confused, or think that you're, like, not telling her the truth about shit. You don't want it to go very far. He nods, but has no idea how to broach that subject. You know, he's not used to it. So I tell him to stand up, and we swap shirts again. Jane comes back and sees him in his leather jacket and me in my Games Workshop jumper, and she says, "Yeah, have you two swapped clothes? Oh, that's very cute," and sits down. Sensing his perfect opportunity, Jason just smiles and lays out the confusion and apologises for not saying anything earlier, but, you know, he was just so engrossed in the conversation. Anyway, they gab away, and I end up talking to a mate, a nice bloke, who is into Mordheim, and you very rarely see blokes who are into Mordheim, so let me tell you, I chewed his ear off. This happens a lot in town, by the way. If you wear your Games Workshop colours, hobbyists will find you and discuss products and other things. I head home at about 3 AM, after it's obvious Jane has taken Jason home at this point. I see them leaving, and he sort of waves as he goes, you know what I mean? Anyway, he turns up the next day to my flat, and apparently she's given him a few things in his bag, in his rucksack. Okay, so she's given him, and I quote, he only showed me a few things, but in his message, and I quote, a pair of lingerie set, it's very nice, ladies deodorant, a toothbrush, and spare leggings. And she says it's for when she stays at his place for the Motley Crue gig in a few weeks. I had no idea about this, right? But they got married 4 months ago, as in literally right now, 4 months ago, and Jason was able to find me once again because of this channel. So a huge congrats to him and his MILF bride. Fran, she didn't mind I called her that, by the way. So I did change her name, but not Jason's, because, you know, I didn't speak to her, I spoke to Jason. But congratulations to them. It's really nice to have a nice ending to a story rather than one that's, like, really horrible. But that's what can happen in the hobby, right? Everyone has these sort of these stories, and I really want to tell a story about, like, a bunch of Games Workshop managers going to Amsterdam and going to strip clubs, but I think I'll save that one for next time. But thank you very, very, very much for watching. This was another one of my stories from a time working Games Workshop. Not all of them will be from the shop floor. Some of them will be, you know, out and about whilst, you know, Games Workshop things are going on. Love you all. Long time. Have a really good week. And I'll speak to you, probably not tomorrow because I'll be with my daughter, but I will speak to you towards Thursday and Friday. Have a really good one. Love you all. Speak soon. See you later.